Hello and welcome everybody to Star Trek New Worlds. My name is Tony. Thank you for joining us here live on Saturday at 11 o'clock Pacific time. If you're catching us live, then thank you for taking the time to catch us here and now. If you're catching us on the replay, then thank you and welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. If you're brand new here and you've never seen us before and you're wondering, Tony, what is all this? It is a turn-based strategy game that we play online here with you. Today, unfortunately, no Facebook Live. The internet weather is not playing nice, but YouTube and Twitch are live and up and running. We show the game that we play using the rule set of Federation Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, and the magic of the map is populated by Vassal. So, exciting and delighting, and it's going to be an interesting day, as you saw with the thumbnail. Today, we're talking about the Siege of Romulus. In our last episode, as we were sort of catching up or getting back into the routine after a little bit of a break with our campaign, you saw that the Romulan Empire was being attacked by the Klingons. For those of you who do not know what is going on in this game, many moons ago now, 5 years, 10 turns, or 11 turns ago, the Romulans surprise attacked the Klingons and crossed the border. They pushed us back to the Klingon homeworld and sieged it, although it was sort of a lackluster attempt. And since then, the Klingons have steadily pounded stakes into the ground, moved the Romulans back, and are now on the doorstep of their homeworld itself. So, the tides have turned, and certainly now we have begun the siege of the Romulan capital. We don't have a galactic news for today because the galactic news of last week was this turn's galactic news. What we will do today is we'll go through the map and we will discuss the battle of what happened in the siege of Romulus, how that played out, what happened, and you will see how things go. So, with that said, I will quickly go to... Actually, you know what I'll do? I will go to this screen and have you see what's going on the map, and then we'll go from there. Here we go. All right. So you might have remembered this scene when we were talking about the exciting and delighting things that were going on with the siege of Romulus. So just quickly at the beginning of the turn, we usually talk about fleet cap and EP. So let's talk about that real quickly. I'm sorry, my phone for some reason is lighting up. All right, so here we are. The Carnivon are at 56 EP at the beginning of turn 104. The Gorn are at 75 EP. Their economy is climbing, and we'll show you why. The ISC are at 68.5. The Klingon Empire, how they have fallen, only at 70.5 EP. The Paravians, no, Remans, there we are. The Remans, the Klingons with another flavor. The Remans are at 82.5 EP. The Romulans succumbing to 56. And the Tholians are the rulers of the roost, capping it off at 84 EP total. They are the top of the top of the top when it comes to the economy. When we talk about fleet cap, that's the number of ships in your fleet, the total attack and defense factors you can generate. You can see here the Carnivon have 121 ships in their monstrous fleet, 503 attack factors, 631 defense. For those of you who are just joining us and have never seen this before, the fleet cap number, which is the number at the far right here, which in the Carnivon's case is 635. When you see a difference between that number and, for example, the 631 of their total defense factors, that usually implies that there are some crippled ships in the mix. Fleet cap is calculated using the defense factor as if the ship was not crippled, and the stats that you see for attack and defense factor are both included. All right, let's go to the Gorn at 170 ships. Jeez Louise. They have 519 attack factors, 745 defense, with a fleet cap of 783. The ISC have 166 ships, so just shy of the Gorn Goliath, We have a 644 total attack factors, 840. Whoa, ladies and gentlemen, a coffee was just fired off screen. We will come back to that momentarily. It looks like the Juggernauts have fired a caffeinated piece of goodness our way. We'll return to that in just a momento. Where were we? 166 total ships for the ISC, 644, 814 defense, 834 fleet cap. The Klingons. Wow, we are certainly at the bottom of the barrel these days. 120 total ships in their fleet, 456 attack factors, 504 defense, with a fleet cap of 584. That is 80 points difference between their fleet cap and defense factors. There'd be a lot of crippled ships in that fleet. The Remans have 180 ships, total 693 attack factor, 761 defense. Wow. Wow, these fleets killing me, with a total fleet cap of 767. The Romulans are at 77 total ships in their fleet. They have 277 attack factors, 392 defense, with a fleet cap of 454. Now, that's a particular number we'll get back to in a second because, of course, with the war between the Romulans and the Klingons, how those two stack up is kind of important. And, of course, the Tholians, currently the king of the hill, when not only with the economy, but with their total fleet of 197. They will certainly be the first to crack 200 with a 609 attack factor, 928 defense. How soon will it be until they crack 1,000 for their total defense factors? Oh my goodness. Fleet cap of 930. Whoa! My goodness gracious me. Okay. So let's, I'm going to take a quick look down here, and you can see here there is, as we zoom in one more layer, you can see here is the aftermath of the Klingon assault on the Romulan capital. Here we have three fleets coalesce, the Emperor South and Logistics 001 fleet. These three guys had attacked or assaulted the Romulan homeworld, and you can see the Romulan homeworld is currently defended by a number of errant ships, as well as Expeditionary Fleet, Home Fleet, 4th Legion, and 3rd Legion. So I won't go into all the different fleet boxes here, but I will ever so quickly talk to you about the initial attack and assault. Whoa! Another coffee has been fired. Oh my goodness, all this coffee firing going off in the background. I am so sorry I don't have it up and running. We are going to talk about Dale Davis firing coffees our way. Woo! My goodness. Okay, I'm going to take a quick sip here to recognize and appreciate all those coffee firings. Stand by. For those of you who have never joined us here on our live show before or catching us on the replay, coffee is one of the ways that you can show your support for us. And of course, caffeinated goodness and that stimulation is what keeps us pepping and riding the wave when it comes to keeping high energy, high impact content for you. So we'll get back to that in a moment, but let me quickly talk about this progression of damage in the battle. All right, I'm going to pull up, I believe, yes, this is what we're looking at. Okay, as you can see here in my lovely Word document, this is the initial, these were the initial forces that attacked the Romulan homeworld. Now, whether or not you can sort of map out exactly what's here, let me walk through it real quick. The headline news is that the Klingon forces had a total of 35 ships assaulting the Romulan homeworld. The Romulans were defending with 42, so the Romulans had more ships to start off with. However, the Klingons were attacking with 2 C6s. Those are the dreadnoughts of the Klingon fleet. They are a 10 attack, 12 defense ship. A TGA with 2 battle pods. That effectively makes it an 11 attack, 12 defense ship. So that's quite a lot of firepower just there. We have a D7C, which is a 9-9. A D7M, 3 of them. They are 8 attack, 7 defense ships. The D6L, which is a command cruiser variant of the D6, it is an 8-9 ship, 3 of those. We have not one, there are actually 2 of these D6Ms, so my apologies, there are 2 of those bad boys. Let's just quickly correct that now, meaning that the Klingons had 36 ships, not 35. D6EMs are survey ships, but the reason why they're involved in this particular assault is they can generate 2 electronic warfare points. They also have 6 attack, 7 defense ship. We have 2 F5Cs, which are 5 attack, 6 defense, 3 F5Ms, which are a straight 4, a F5S, which is a scout ship, and 18 E4Ms, which are 4 attack, 3 defense ships. But the Romulans were standing up with their defense of 42 ships, magic number 42, and they had 4 of their dreadnoughts, which are 8 attack, 10 defense ships, the Vultures, 4 of those VULMs. They had 8 non-crippled KEMs, 5-8 ships, 2 crippled, excuse me, 1 QEM, which is a 5-7 ship, and 3 of those crippled. They all crippled to 3 3/4s, 3/5s. We'll confirm that in a moment. 2 YFALs, which are their Y-era maulers. They are a straight 7 ship. A WE, which is the base hull for the King Eagles and Queen Eagles. They were, it was crippled. An FE, which is a tug, which is a 2 attack, 6 defense ship. 3 PEs, which are their version of a survey ship, which bring EW to the fight as well. They are also a 2-6 ship. A Scout Eagle, again, 2-6, but has a little bit more EW in the bank. 14 of their BHMs, which are 4-5 ships. An SNM, which is a 3-4. And then the YFEL, which is a 0 attack, 4 defense ship, which is just a exploration freighter. Oh, another coffee has been fired. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to get on the other line here and start recognizing all this caffeinated goodness coming our way. Wow, whoa, whoa, whoa. Holy Dinah. It is from the Riemann Battle Cider Appreciation Club. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Oh my goodness, you guys are too good to me today. All right. Let's race through this. We have 5 prime teams, 1 that is wounded. We have the Carnivon and Klingon R&D teams, which are currently in captivity, or shall we say, under house arrest. That's a lot. So those 2 groups of ships, 42 versus 36, were attacking each other in what's called an approach battle. If you don't know what an approach battle is, when you attack a base or unit acting like a base, in this case their homeworld, which has 3 planets, you have to do an approach battle. 3 rounds of combat as you are getting close to the target. Effectively allows the defender to kind of ride out and meet you before you hit the castle, so to speak, and they can engage you in the field. And that's exactly what happened here. Romulan forces sallied forth to engage the approaching Klingon attackers and engaged in battle in the field. Now those that 3 rounds of battle resulted in the following cripples on both sides. You can see the Klingon losses there and the Romulan losses. So 1 D7 was crippled, 3 D6Ls were crippled, 2 F5Cs, and 3 F5Ms crippled. That's a lot of damage. I won't lie. However, one of the strengths about the Romulan fleet is that even their crappy ships have really good defense factors, which makes them just hardy and hard to beat, so to speak. The Romulan losses, I direct damaged because those dirty maulers are they can really cause a lot of havoc. 2 maulers in a fleet can cause a total of, in this case, 14 directed damage points, which means he can pick a target, and assuming he's generating as much as 14 damage points, he can pick a target to do 14 damage to. That can annihilate my fleet, or any fleet that attacks the Romulans, or anyone who has a mauler. So my raison d'etre of getting into this approach battle was to take out those Falcons, or at least cripple them initially, so I could reduce their combat effectiveness. As soon as they're crippled, they can't use that mauler ability. So targeted those 2 guys and crippled them both. Then the rest of the damage was just normally resolved, and that resulted in 9 Battlehawks being crippled. So when you look at that, that's almost 50 points of damage being crippled there on the Romulan side, plus another 14. So let's see here. 9 times 5 is 45, plus the 14. That puts us at 59 points of damage absorbed by the Romulan forces. On the Klingon side, let me do some quick math here. 3 times 9 is 27, plus a 7 puts us at 35. The D6C is also a 7, so we're up to 42. 2 5Cs is 12, so we were at 42 plus 12 is 54, plus 3 4Ms is 12, so 54 plus 12 is 66. So 66 damage they inflicted on me, lot more damage. Now, the directed damage is 2 to 1, so for every 2 points of damage every 1 point of damage I inflicted, I'd generate 2. So I might have generated more damage, but I actually inflicted less, as the case may be. But targeting those key units was critical. So what does all that mean, Tony? You did an approach battle. Good for you. Congratulations. Whoopah. Well, what ended up happening is this. We went to attack the homeworld. And we talked a little bit about this in our last episode about homeworld assaults and what happens. So this is sort of mapping out for you what went down. On the left, you have the reserve, or what I call the floater fleet. This is 1/2 of the total ships that were defending the homeworld, and they are ships that are mobile and can go to any particular target. In purple there, you can see there are 3 planets with fixed defenses, i.e. like bases and things like that. Their homeworld Romulus, which had a YDK and a bunch of planetary ground bases. Sondal, which is their second planet, which has a base being upgraded and then a bunch of planetary ground bases. And then their third planet, which had just planetary ground bases. And then you can see there are 3 different columns of units that were defending those different planets. Romulus, Sondal, and Juruana all had their own kind of group of ships. So I attacked Juruana, which is the one on the far right with the Prime Team, Scout Eagle, YFEL, 1 KEM, 1 crippled KEM, Battlehawk, and a crippled Battlehawk. So those guys were then joined by the reserve fleet, and we had a big brouhaha. Because of our sort of confusion around how we were going to process these battles, as we mentioned in our last live stream, I don't have all the round by round battles or round by round and total cripples of everything that was done at that time or in those battles. Suffice it to say, this is what the whole assault looked like at the end. At the end of the day, I devastated Juruana. I destroyed all the planetary ground bases and crippled and destroyed or crippled a whole bunch of those ships. Once it's all done, this is what we have left. On the Klingon side, we have D7, 3 D6 cells, 3 F5Ms, and there should be some F5Cs in there that are crippled, and then, of course, 15 E4Ms. These are all the ships that were crippled in the various assaults, the approach battle, and then the attack in Juruana 3. We still have the ships in white here, so the big hitters, basically, most of the big hitters are still in effect and in stereo sound. The Romulans, on their mobile forces, they have 5 Battlehawks crippled, 1 of their YFALs crippled. They have 2 Vultures, 4 King Eagles, a Queen Eagle, a Tug, a Pelican Eagle, which is a survey ship, 2 Battlehawks not crippled, and 3 Prime Teams in their floater fleet. On those static defenses, they have their base, the 11 PGBs, the 6 YPGBs, and then still the, let's do that, makes it a little bit easier to see. Yeah, boom, there we go. So you still got the Vulture, which is the Dreadnought, King Eagle command cruiser, the YFB, which is a W-era frigate. You have a Prime Team injured. You have a Gorn Tug, with a repair pod, which for some reason wasn't included initially. We have 1 R&D, 1 Klingon and 1 Carnivon R&D team. These are all the non-crippled units. And then, of course, you can see there they've got a crippled King, Queen, and 2 Battlehawks as well. On Sondal, which is their second planet, you have still the Dreadnought, Pelican Eagle, 2 King Eagles, 2 Battlehawks, Prime Team, and then 2 crippled Queens and a crippled Battlehawk. That's what we got. So, based on what you see here, do you think the Klingon forces could have successfully attacked either Romulus or Sondal? Short answer is no. But as we discussed in our last live stream, I can't just sit there on the planet I devastated. Even though I destroyed all the defenses and I have sort of quote-unquote possession of the planet, I can't just sit in that hex and hold it. Either I take the whole kit and caboodle, or I got to back out. And that's what happened. I backed out and I had to retreat, and Klingon forces stepped out. So when they stepped out, that led us to here. And this is where we're at. We have that fleet that I just showed you of Klingon ships sitting here in Whiskey 48. We have all those ships that were crippled and so on sitting here on Victor 47, ready to reach out and assault which I'm sure they will, these crippled ships right here. There's a lot of sort of interesting dynamics that are going on here, and I'll be very interested to see how this next turn rolls out. I'm sure I'll be getting emails over the course of the weekend, but it'll be very interesting to see how this all sort of materializes as we go forward. So let me slide over to our other screen right now. All right, so based on everything that you just saw there, was that of value to you? Was there any usefulness in me walking through that progression of battles so that you could see what happened and what the results were? Let me know in the comments if you're watching on the replay. If you're in live, feel free to hit that thumbs up button, tickle the YouTube algorithm just the right way, and let me know that that is something that you want to see more of. Let's get down to brass tacks and say thank you, everybody, for all those caffeinated goodness disruptor sounds. Unfortunately, I didn't have that set up on that previous screen that we were on, so we couldn't see the disruptor fires happening as they go. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, you can see over there in the corner, there is the coffee.com/New Worlds. Also the QR code in between me and the chat. If you go to that link and or that QR code, you can send us a coffee, which 3 of our fantastic members of our community have already done. As you can see there in the chat, let's go through. First, it was the Juggernauts firing us a piece of caffeinated goodness. Cheers of big ears to the AI authoritarian masters of us all. One sec. Oh yeah. Then that was quickly followed up by Dale Davis, one of our newest contributors or members of our community here. So thank you. Welcome, Dale. Thank you very much for that piece of caffeinated goodness. Big cheers to you, Dale. Here we go. All right. And last but not least, I should note here, when you go over to the coffee or go over to donate coffee, there's certain tiers that you can offer or certain sort of blasts that you can offer. You can send one coffee, that is $5, like a $5 coffee. That's kind of par for the course these days, which is so tragic that you have to go spend $5 to get a cup of coffee. Crazy. However, $5 for a coffee, boom, you send it our way, and that's what you get. That's what the Juggernauts fired our way. But not to be held back, we had a goal of 3 coffees today with a total value of $15, which is what those coffees add up to. But Dale didn't hold back. No. He fired not 1 but 2 coffees worth of blaster fire our way and bumped us up to 100% of our goal. So thank you, Dale, for that. But not to be outdone. No. The Remans in the shadows, the ones who share my hull type, and like the bats, as you saw in our community post, they fired a coffee as well. So Dell, our good fan of the Reman Brotherhood, cheers to you for driving us to 133% of our goal today. Ooh, here it comes. All right, with those accolades sent out and appreciation, thank you so much. I feel like I'm sweating already. Let's go into the chat real quick and say hello to everybody who's here. We got Bill and Daniel, here we go. Paul Williams, pew pew, hello all. Oh, the Fluffy Gorn are in the house. Paging Dr. Death, code green please, respond. Hey Gorn, Mr. General, says Dell. We've got Dale Davis, hello all, joining us to and fro. Oh, George Duffy. Excuse me. Alert, death spiral approaching. We've got the coffee that was fired. George Duffy says, excuse me, hey, Bill, missed you guys. Missed you too, George. Welcome back. Daniel, awesome. Dale Davis, woohoo, says Daniel. Nice. Hi, Dale. George Duffy, Tholian war doctrine. Don't start a fight, just be strong to finish it. Indeed. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts about how this sort of conflict is going with the Romulans and the Klingons, but I don't want to spend all day on just that conflict. All right, we've got the coffee fired by the Remans, and then You Can't Be Petty is here in the house. Hello, all. George is saying hello. If there was only 2 Praetor teams, how did each planet wind up with 1 each? There were a total of 6 in the Hex. So there were 5, one wounded, so that's how they got split up that way. Daniel says there were 4 Predator teams in all. 2 of them were with the mobile fleet. Yes. So as I saw the email, I had 5, but we can do the math easy enough on the map. Never mind. It was a typo error. Thanks, Daniel. All right, here we go. So, yeah, let's jump into the map and let's talk about all that. Here we go. Hoorah! All right, so this is where we just were spending a whole bunch of time. As a reminder, and I'll just slide the map over a bit this way. So as you've seen, I'll just take away the ships real quick. The initial Romulan assault was, and I've got to give nothing but praise to Dave, who is the Romulan player, at how effective he was. First of all, he was sneaky about it, which is, of course, the best way to be. And I didn't notice, negligent that I was, that he was building up this fleet on a base that was in Bravo 47, which was right here. Now, as you can see, that base is no longer there. However, he launched this coordinated attack from bases in 47 and 49 and just washed across the border, annihilating the bases I had there. In a matter of 4 turns, I think, he was pressing onto my homeworld, and I had a series of YDKs sort of in the background here, which were strategically placed to be my repairs so that I could, front a defense if I needed to. Oh no. No. Dave was so good and quick and effective in his attack that he was able to devastate and destroy those bases well before I was able to get ships in place to defend them. And as a result, the fat lady was singing. But with that said, he got right up to my homeworld and laid out an assault. Now, due to and it is only, shall we say, a combination of a baited trap and a rookie mistake that things happen the way they happen. Romulans have this magical thing, you may have heard about it, called the cloaking device. One of the perks of having a cloaking device is that if they choose, they can avoid or bypass approach battles. That has a lot of value when attacking a homeworld, because then the defender has to split his ships across 3 different planets. That could effectively reduce the total ships he can bring to any particular fight. And if you have a low number of ships defending the capital, that could be the make it or break it in a fight. However, in his assault on the homeworld, he had recruited 2 Orions. And this was, like I say, it was just sort of like a mistake. We all make mistakes like I did with regards to planetary ground bases. So you'll learn something new every day. So by including the Orions that did not have a cloaking device, therefore an approach battle needed to be fought. Because the Orions basically sprung the trap or let them know that these Romulan ships were approaching. So the Romulan ships, plus, which included a dreadnought, plus these 2 Orion ships, had to fight an approach battle. Now, I was a little sneaky on my own, covering my hiney with a reserve fleet that was within operational movement of the capital. So that big reserve fleet moved in to defend, and I had more than enough ships to make that approach battle so painful for the Romulans they couldn't win any further. So we had that fight, and then he retreated, and then I started the pushback as we went from there. So the Romulans and the way they executed their attack, phenomenal. They were able to push me right back to my homeworld. And as I'm showing you this map here, you can see that there is a void of bases on the Klingon side. What you can see are planets. You can see there's this Colony V, which used to be a planet, and then Nippon. Now, the thing about planets in this game, and we'll see how this works in the next game. So according to the rules in Federation and Empire, when you take a planet, you don't get to draw supply from it until the start of the next turn, but you get to draw supply. So these planets have become islands of supply nodes that have allowed the Romulans initially to just hop, skip, and jump from planet to planet, pulling supply from the planet and being able to use that as a base of operations to reach out and cause havoc, which they have done very effectively. They have destroyed a whole bunch of bases in my backfield that they wouldn't have been able to reach had they not been able to use the planets. Those planets have been a huge Achilles heel in the defense. In the assault, once I have regained control of those planets and shuffled off the Romulan invaders. Now what happens is those have become critical points of supply for me to move forward and reach out to the Romulans. However, you'll notice on the Romulan side, there is a void of anything. We've obviously destroyed those bases. As of right now on this map, you can only see bases. I've taken away the ships. So there's a void of bases here. Well, we've destroyed those. But there's no planets to use as a hop, skip, and jump point from a supply perspective so that you can attack and retrograde back. That is a defensive advantage for the Romulans because that means I have to build them in order to reach out and repair or use it as a place to retroactively retreat back to. In the game, when you reach out and attack, you can move, in this case, for example, 6 hexes out to attack. At the end of the turn, essentially, there is retrograde movement, which allows you to essentially reach out, attack, and then come back. The attacker can do this, the defender can't. So you can reach out, attack, and then move back to the retrograde point, which is usually a base, planet, or some other supply point. Key to note here, which you will see on the map, tugs and convoys providing supply are not retrograde points. That's key. All right, let's bring back ships. So why on earth would I leave this vulnerable fleet of crippled ships here to be potentially attacked by the Romulans? Well, the reason why is because I didn't have a retrograde point, right? I only have, as I just showed you, I have no bases in this area. There's only this colony here, which is a retrograde point, but it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hexes away, and there's no way I can retrograde back to it. So even though I might have units such as a convoy here and a tug here that might be able to provide supply, what it can't do is provide the retrograde point, which is critical to be able to sort of jab, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, like someone famously said, Muhammad Ali. So that's why this is sort of happening the way it's happening. Now, there's a lot of options at this point. There's a lot of things that the Klingons or the Romulans can do. The Romulans have a lot of options about whether they want to stomp this pointy spear. Do they want to try and reach back and try and cause some problems with this supply infrastructure back here? There's a lot of things to do. However, one of the things that the Romulans need to think about, or one of the constraints that they only have so much supply, should I say, repair capacity, which they are trying to fix right now by building an extra base. Let's pull up the Romulan homeworld, and you can see why. So they have this YDK that's being upgraded, which will be completed, I believe, next turn. So it's not operational today, but it'll be operational next turn, the start of next turn. So they can repair a bunch of stuff next turn. Those two YDKs, the one on the Romulus homeworld and Sondal, their second planet, those two combined can provide 16 points of repair. The Romulan ships all require 2 repair points to repair a ship, which is a disadvantage for the Romulans, although most factions have that same problem, meaning that they have to spend a total of, at this point, 8 points of repair to repair 16 points of damage. So basically, they can repair 8 ships. That's going to be challenging for them because that's a lot of repair. That's a lot of EP to spend to repair ships. And then, of course, they got to build new ships if they want to keep building up their fleet. Now, however, that's a much better position than the Klingons are in because we don't have anything. There's no bases. There's no nothing. The Klingons are so out to lunch or like out in the cold. It's ridiculous. But this is a constraint that they're going to have to deal with. And because, as you saw at the very beginning, the Romulans only have 56 EP, I don't know where they are on their economic journey when it comes to the war. However, at some point, they will start hitting economic exhaustion. And if they have 56 EP and they only end up getting 75% of that 56 EP, quick math here, 56 times 0.75, that means, let's try that again, 56 times 0.75, that means they'll only have 42 EP to work with. So if you take away 8 points for repair And I'm not sure how much they're going to build, but let's say it's going to take them at least, based on what the Klingons build, and I know the Romulan ships are more expensive, I'm going to say they're spending somewhere between 20 and 30 EP on building ships. That's going to be their total EP spend, not to mention any other EP that they're going to have to try and pay for going into deficit or debt or anything else. I won't bore you with the money part of it, but either way, it's going to be challenging for them once they start coming up against that. So that's the Romulan side. How about the Klingons? Well, the Klingons have an advantage here because they've got these tugs, which are forward deployed up here. And tugs acting as supply point, they can be a strategic move node. What does that mean? Well, when the Klingons build ships here, and you've probably heard this commonly with perhaps other conflicts in the world, getting the stuff you build to the front line is a little bit of a challenge sometimes. In this case, strategic movement helps with that. At this point in the game, the Klingons have 2x or 2 times strategic movement. What that means is that they have 2 times the operational movement of their ships to be able to get to where they need to go. So you have to jump from supply point to supply point to make that work, however. So long story short, the ships built at the Klingon homeworld can be forward deployed right up here. And that means that they are ready to defend and be part of the fight when the Romulans attack. Why is that problematic? The Klingons can build ships that, 2 fronts. One, they're cruisers, the D7, the D7M, the D7C, and the C6 Dreadnought, and even the tugs, the TGAM, which is a 7 attack, 8 defense ship. Their ships are all bigger in attack factor or have more attack factors than the Romulans, meaning that when we get into a fight and we just line up our ships in a battle line, the Klingon ships have more punch every time. The defense factors are very similar, and so generally speaking, we'll have like a shootout. I just have more bullets to fire, so to speak, than the Romulans do in any one particular engagement. However, the Romulan strength, like I said before, is that all their ships have pretty high defense factors, so it makes them sort of tougher to take out. The Klingon ships, on the other hand, like the E4M, which is our super frigate, they have really crappy defense factors. They are a 4 attack 3 defense ship. The F5M, which is the destroyer, is a 4-4 ship. Compare that to the Battlehawk, which is the Romulan destroyer. It is a 4 attack 5 defense ship. The difference, though, is that Klingon frigates and destroyers are a 1-point repair ship, meaning that if I had a YDK up there, I could repair 8 of them in 1 turn. If I had 2, I can repair 16 of them. That just means that I can repair them faster and cheaper than the Romulans can. And when we start talking about money being a constraint and having to spend money to repair stuff and get stuff and the ability to like throughput to be able to get ships back up on the line, that becomes a bit of a factor. However, I don't have any bases up there yet. And it's going to take a while, even if I was going to build them, to get them up and running. So that's a problem for the future that the Romulans don't have to deal with right now. A challenge the Klingons have to deal with, certainly, but I digress. So without spending, although I've spent so much time, on talking about what this dynamic looks like, hopefully that helps sort of map out for you what's going on there. So yeah, that's what's going on here. We have a whole bunch of pointy things pointed at other people with pointy things, and it's a bit of a standoff to see who can cause the most amount of damage to each other. Think of like a 1920s boxing match where you have 2 guys in a circle just slugging it out without any actual, footwork or anything like that. How many punches can you take to the face before you get knocked out? That's kind of what's going on here. The only difference is the Romulans have a really good cut and corner man who is patching them up, and the Klingons don't. The Klingons just keep throwing bodies at the war and see if that'll work. We'll see. We'll see. Anywho, let's move on to other folks in the map, or on the map, I should say. Let's talk about my brother from another mother, the Remans. So, the Remans recently tried to attack this little guy up here. This is a Borak faction, so we'll look up Borak BBBBB, Minor Vudar Borak. And Second Fleet is the fleet that they attacked. So they sent a bunch of ships up here. And in the Galactic News, you might have heard that Rykon Fleet had been wiped out. And I don't know what the orders were or how that all worked out, but nonetheless, the Romulans had a terrible time of it and got annihilated. However, in the process, they did cause 3 SIDS worth of damage, and looks like they virtually annihilated the Borak fleet. As a reminder, SIDS stands for Starbase Incremental Damage System. In the context of a YDK, 4 SIDS turns it into a crippled unit, and it has 2 SIDS remaining after that. It has 16 defense factors, and basically you cut that up into 4 pieces, so 4 damage per SIDS. And then once you do 4 damage, it does a SIDS worth, or an incremental piece of damage, which you have to then repair incrementally if you want to repair the base. So they did 3 SIDS worth of damage, 1 more or 4 more points of damage, and then you cripple it. Incidentally, this is important for the Romulan fight, or any fight for anybody for that matter. Crippled bases cannot repair. If your base is crippled, it cannot perform its repair function. That's a big deal for YDKs that you spend all that money on, because YDKs are all about repair. If you cripple it, it can't repair anything. So it looks like the Borak are just dead man walking here, because these ships aren't going to defend anything from anybody. And it looks like all they got here is a YDK that's about to be crippled. So once the Romulans decide to put their boots back on and go up there, they'll be stomping all over that Borak threat. With that said, let's go to what I love about the situation here, which is, let me just maximize that, which is the Lyran Pocket. So the Lyran Pocket was so exciting, or has been so exciting, because you have 3 very potent factions vying over the potential of what the Lyrans can provide. As we've seen in earlier parts of the game, with the Klingons going into the Balkans and taking out the former Federation faction, or where the Federation was, and taking their home system, taking a home capital system like the Lyran one here can be very financially rewarding. And once you take it, you have the ability to, once you've secured the planets, you make a lot of money off those ships or off those planets, and it really boosts the economy. So the Lyran Pocket here provides that same thing. If we pull up the Lyran homeworld, you will see that they have a capital, a minor planet, and a colony, which, if you just take the capital, that's 4 EP right away. Once those planets recover, which takes about 10 turns, then you have 5, because you don't get the 10 from the capital. You get 5 from a major planet, 3 from a minor planet, and then 1 there. That's 9 EP, $9 to spend out of that capital system. And of course, when you improve the attitude, make them happy plus, as you can see the Lyran homeworld is here, then you get additions or bonuses to the EP that it generates as well. So there's a lot going on here. You've got that 9 EP potential, and then another one here. That's 10 EP just in this little pocket. Well, the Gorn, the Remans, and the Carnarvon have all been thinking about going in. Triton Fleet here, you can see here from the Reman side, Triton Fleet is not small. Triton Fleet has a total, and we talked about Maulers before. This is their Mauler. It is a 10 attack, 9 defense ship. He's got 10 of them. 10 of them. Oh my God. He's also got the KRM is the equivalent of the D7. Is it the D7? I think it's the D6. Either way, I think it's the equivalent of the D6 for the Klingons. It's a 6 attack, 7 defense ship. And then you've got a couple of Y ships that are filling out the breadth here. So nonetheless, Triton Fleet is a big enough, strong enough fleet that it can do quite a bit of damage. Pegasus Fleet, which is not to be ignored, once I pull it up here, has the K7RM, which is the D7 equivalent, so it's a 7-7. Then they have a couple Maulers, and then a number of M ships here, which is their version of the K5. Yeah, the F5M, thank you. They have the K5M, so they got 3 of those. And their ships are better. They have a 5 attack, 4 defense, as opposed to my straight 4. And then they have the K4M, which is like my E4M very similar. So they have got a bunch of those ships. They got a total of, what is it, 9 and 6, respectively, 2 maulers and 2 cruisers. That fleet is not nothing and can certainly do some damage depending on where they are attacking. But of course, the Gorn, my friends, are not to be outdone because, as we saw in the fleet cap numbers, they have almost the most amount of, like, they have a lot of ships. Looks like a lot of them are here. So we have Hammer and Mobile Fleet. So Hammer Fleet, 4 cruisers, pardon me, another light cruiser, a boatload of these DDMs, 14 of them, a scout, and so on. But then there's also Mobile Fleet, which has an additional 4 CAMs. That's a total of 8 in that hex. Then they got a total of 5 CLMs, so 6 total. 13 plus the 14, that's 27 DDMs. Then a bunch of Y ships to round it out and another scout. So there's a lot of business going on right there. And they got a YDK, and they're ready to rock. Of course, the the Carnarvon are not to be outdone either. They have Topaz and Emerald Fleet here, which probably don't quite measure up as much as the Gorn, but they're not nothing. Emerald and Topaz Fleet. So you can see here Emerald and Topaz Fleet, which are sitting right here on this hex. You've got a bunch of Y ships, so you've got a command cruiser and a heavy cruiser, Ys each, a light cruiser, and then a bunch of drone bombardment ships. This is one of the strengths that the Carnarvon have, is their ability to introduce drone bombardment. They're the only faction right now that can do that in this game. And while it costs money to launch drones, they can be very effective at, nudging the total attack factors in your favor. They also have another, from their previous alliance with the Hydrons, they bought out a Hydron YDN, so they have another YDN there, important for the command factors, 10 of them. Then he's got a bunch of M ships, a total of 3 CAs and 4 CLs. These are good because their CAs are practically GW ships, or all their M ships are practically GW ships, and they all have heel nippers, which are, as a reminder, the heel nipper, wherever you see that N on their counter, is a 1-point mauler type weapon. You put 10 of those in a battle line, you get 10 points of directed damage against the target you want, provided that the battle intensity rating, or BUR, is high enough. You can cause a lot of damage and take out specific targets. It's a little vicious. And then, of course, they've got 12 frigates and a scout. So certainly when you put it all together, I would say that if it was a straight-on fight between the Gorn and the Carnarvon lose this particular fight in this hex if that was going to happen. However, they have other ships in the background here. Let's just take a quick look at Ruby Fleet. Ruby, there you are. Okay, well, not much going on there with Ruby Fleet, but they do have other ships in the background here that they could bring to the fight. So between all 3 factions, the question is, which one of these is going to actually step off and take the Lyran pocket? Or is anyone going to take the Lyran pocket? This has been a dance that's been going on for several turns now, and the question is there chatter happening behind the scenes? Is there bitter banter as far as who gets what and how that goes? We'll have to see. Speaking of the Carnarvon, let's roll into them right now. The Carnarvon had just recently dealt with a intergalactic or temporal anomaly of basically a Borak ship that showed up down south here and introduced themselves to the Carnarvon fleet. It was a survey ship, but had the effective firepower of a dreadnought, and the ships that were sent basically took it out. A little bit of a tech boost from that, in the sense that we have a tech tree and research and development that goes on in the background, and so they got a little bit of a bonus because they took out and sort of investigated those pieces, so they figured out a little something about what was going on that futuristic ship, and that helped them move things forward. What else do we have, though, in this area? We've got Wolfpack 1 and Diamond Fleet. Well, let's take a look at Diamond Fleet. Oh, of course, my head is in the way. Pardon me as I slide to the other side. Whoop, there we are. So, Diamond Fleet here, and then Wolfpack 1. So let's take a quick look at Diamante. Diamond Fleet is a cruiser, 2 light cruisers, and a total of 3 frigates. And Wolfpack 1 is Wolfpack. Cruiser, 2 light cruisers, 2 bombardment cruisers, a crippled frigate, and a scout. So nothing. These 2 fleets are just floating around there as we go. You can see here that the drone bombardment cruisers are sitting pretty on this YDK. That looks like it has some SIDS damage. Take away the ships real quick. 2 SIDS worth of damage on this YDK. Incidentally, YDKs that are not crippled can self-repair 1 SIDS per turn. Is it 1 SIDS? Yeah, I believe 1 SIDS per turn. But it takes up their repair capacity, so they can't repair other things. We've got the cruisers here. We've got... So the LCA, which you see here, that's an important ship to note. When you have Y ships in a fleet, you can sort of upgrade them with M-era weapons. But because the weapons are a little more powerful than the ship was designed for, this can cause a problem. We call these National Guard ships, and they are basically beefed up Y-era ships. So the LCA here, you can see it has the N for the heel nipper. It is a 5.6 ship, which I believe is an upgrade from the 3.5 it used to be. But it has the S for shock, meaning that when it attacks, or when any time it uses its weapons, there is a chance that it will suffer shock damage. Shock damage causes the ship to be crippled, and then it's got big problems. So shock damage, and I'll have to look at the rule, but basically if you roll a D6, and I think if it rolls a 5 or 6, or maybe just a 6, it suffers shock damage, and the ship is crippled. Why is that important? Well, these National Guard ships are meant to be a last line of defense. So, I mean, if you're in the position where you're using them, you're not really too worried about that. You got to do everything you can to defend the homeworld. But they're a way to be able to sort of power up your Y-era ships to be able to help defend against those kinds of assaults. So that's what's going on the Carnarvon side. You can see they still have their Olympus visitors over here that are just kind of sitting there. A minor planet. 18 PGBs, a YDK, a tug, and Olympus fleet. Olympus fleet, let's see. Woo! YDN, strike cruiser, 2 light cruisers, M-era light cruisers, 8 frigates, and 3 drone bombardment frigates. So not nothing, and certainly with the state of the Carnarvon fleet at the moment, that's kind of... it would be not a heavy lift, but it would certainly be a lift to be able to go take that out. Now, the most important thing about the Carnarvon map today, can you see it? While I've been talking, have you noticed it? I'll let you think about it while I slide over to one of the most important aspects of the Carnarvon map, which is this little guy right here. This wormhole has been a pivotal point of frustration, not only for the Gorn, the Carnarvon, Romulans. It's been a hot pocket. So this guy has been the doorway into Carnarvon space, or from Carnarvon space into Gorn and Romulan space for a number of turns now. You can see here as I pull up Home Fleet that Home Fleet is not small. It has been the bulwark, the barrier, the defensive position that the Carnarvons have held to try and hold back any potential attacker coming through. You can see we've got a total of 4 YDNs, an unbelievable number of 8 cruisers, 2 command. Look at these command cruisers, 8 9s. Ridiculous. They're such good ships. I mean, I say that as a Klingon who has some pretty good ships. Those are good ships. Those command cruisers, 8 9s, good ships. All right, so those command cruisers with the heel nipper, 8 9 ships. You've got 3 of those. You've got 8 of these cruisers, 2 light cruisers, still a bunch of drone bombardment, 6 of them. You've got 6 destroyers, again with the heel nippers, a total of 13 frigates and 2 scouts. So this fleet is certainly comparable to some of the stuff that the Gorn have thrown at them, but it is designed to be the bulwark, the stop to prevent anything from coming through. And as you can see here, they have a YDK that, if I take away the ships real quick, is going to be completed very shortly. Where I believe this is 117 fall, so it'll be completed next turn. Very interesting. Okay, so did you catch it? Did you see what I was talking about as far as what the big change on the Carnarvon side was? Let's slide back. You'll notice, if I take away the ships, the wormhole moved. The wormhole used to be right on the capital. And that was a problem, because it was a direct doorway to be able to do a capital assault on the Carnarvons. Now, the advantage is, from the Carnarvon side, there's a lot of really good defense that they can pull off when you're coming through that wormhole, but it's still right on your capital. There's no barrier, blockade, or way to stop them. When you're coming through the wormhole, you start off with an approach battle. as people go through the wormhole. Then you go straight to the bases, or in this case, the planets. So there was no ability to introduce approach battles the way we just talked about with the Romulans and the Klingons. Now that the Juliet wormhole has moved, you can do two different types of approach battles. You can do the approach battle as the ships are coming through the wormhole and then defend the hex. And then when they attack the capital, if they attack the capital, then you can also do an approach battle. So this shift of the wormhole is a huge strategic advantage or improvement for the Carnivons. It has put them in a much more secure position with bases bracketing on either side, north and south, of that wormhole. They have an ability to be able to much better defend it. And if I was the Carnivon, I'm building a YDK on that thing ASAP. So, yeah, that's exciting stuff. It's a big change for the Carnivon. But let's not damsel too much. I'll slide to the other side here real quick. Let's talk about the Gorn. And I'm going to start off with the Gorn in the northern section. As you can see, the Klingons have faced a bit of a housing collapse in the Balkans. That's right. Real estate is, it's all about where. After all, location, location, location is all about what matters in real estate. And good gosh gracious me, Klingon real estate has taken a tumble. Can you see? The Gorn have rolled in and certainly gobbled up everything that was once Klingon. And I'll just take away the ships real quick. Boom! Look at all that. They have taken it all. Well, far to be outdone. The Klingons basically have fallen back to the wormhole. Like we were just talking about with the Carnivon and the defense of their wormhole, the Klingons have this wormhole, which goes into Klingon space, and we are holding out the barrier, the bulwark, the beachhead that is holding back an assault of potential Tholian, because let's look at Tholian First Fleet. This is ridiculous. Tholian First Fleet, look at this. 9 cruisers. Ooh, what's this CAM? Ooh, okay, interesting. Okay, so little catch up on the Tholians real quick. The Tholians, up until now, have had CMs as being their cruisers. We can see a CAM now, which is the first real heavy cruiser that they have. And what's so important about that? 8 attack, 7 defense. Who does that remind you of? D7s. D7Ms are also 8 attack, 7 defense ships. These are good ships. Of course, they, far to be outdone, they've got a total of 15 destroyers and 30 patrol craft, which are like their frigates. And those ships can all pinwheel, which when they do pinwheel, 3 ships go together and it increases their total defense factor by 50%. Leave a pinwheel in a battle round if it completes a battle round without being destroyed, and the pinwheel can generate a web. A Tholian web prevents you from swapping out crippled ships in a battle line, meaning anything that goes into the battle line stays there until it's destroyed. Yeah. There are some restrictions around when and how you can use them, for example, when you're attacking another base. But, man, that Tholian fleet is, that's big news. So, but we've got 5th and Strike Fleet and a bunch of Gorn business here. Now, what's interesting about this, you've got 5th and Strike Fleet. So, Gorn, there's 5th Fleet and Gorn Strike Fleet. Let's just slide that down. So, you can see a cruiser, 4 destroyers and a scout. That's nothing too much. But Strike Fleet is a dreadnought, 2 YCCs, a crippled. So these crippled ships were crippled because the Gorn attacked the Klingons this last turn. However, they had not taken those planets yet, and so half of their fleet, basically all the Strike Fleet, was out of supply when they attacked. When you attack out of supply, your attack factors are reduced by half. Basically, the premise is you don't have the ammunition for heavy weapons, so all you can use is your energy weapons. So without your heavy weapons, your attack factors are reduced by half. Defense factors are still good, but you just don't have the ammunition to unload the heavy stuff. So they weren't able to generate all the attack factors that they wanted to do, and so they backed out. That's just, shall we say, a logistical hiccup. I'm sure they'll come back in force this coming turn. So that's what's going on with the Gorn. The Gorn, of course, over on this other side here have, as we mentioned before, hammer and mobile fleet, and just in their backyard or in the backfield here, 2 colonies providing supply, a wormhole going back to their home sort of area, which we'll look at in a second. But they got Anvil Fleet and YDK here, and away we go. So that's not nothing. That's quite a bit. Let's scroll down here, and you can see here's that AA wormhole over in the corner here. I know it's hard to see the cursor. This AA wormhole is the one that leads up to that area back there. And this hotel wormhole here is the one that leads to the Balkans. Interesting to note, because the Gorn and the Tholians are allied, they can draw supply through this wormhole. If they weren't, those ships would cause a problem because they would break supply. Of course, the stuff that's in the Balkans can draw supply from the planets and the stuff that's in the Balkans. That's not an issue. It's just that with the Tholians sitting on that wormhole and the Gorn taking it, maybe the Tholians can use those ships for other things, which we'll talk about in a second, and just let the Gorn take that over, because the Tholians have a little bit on their hands in a second here. Lastly, let's talk about the ships that are sort of in the vicinity of that wormhole for the Carnarvon, because, you know, they were fighting not too long ago. Home and Vengeance Fleet. Let's take a look. Home Fleet and Vengeance Fleet. So named fleets. Okay. Vengeance Fleet is this one right here. It has a cruiser and a total of 27. Oh! 27 destroyers, my goodness, plus another cruiser, a light cruiser, and another 6. So that's 33 destroyers, plus a crippled one, a scout, and then 2 cruisers and a light cruiser. So that's not nothing. And then there's other stuff here. Look at this. We've also got, this is their museum planet. They have a bunch of like antiquated ships here. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. Plus you've got another YDK up here with, looks like 2 CAMs, a CLM, 5 DMs, sort of destroyers, and a 2 light cruisers. So there's a handful of ships certainly in the area that could, if they wanted to, attack this wormhole and cause a bit of a headache for the Carnarvons if they so desired. And I said lastly, but let me just round out what's going on with the Gorn with, notice these crippled ships in the backyard here? What's that all about? This. The Juggernauts have a starbase in the corner, and we think in all corners of the hex of the map. And from that starbase, they have been refitting a bunch of auxiliary warships, and they've been sending them out to engage with folks. So this one, for example, has an auxiliary battlecruiser, a frigate, and then, of course, a starbase. The Gorn have been trying to pick a fight with these guys, and as a result, they've been, like I say, getting beaten, because starbases are very difficult to destroy. 36 attack, 36 defense. They are potent defensive structures, and of course with ships and everything supporting it, it's quite a deal to deal with. But they've got second fleet here, which I'm going to guess isn't really that much. Yeah, nothing there. It's an exploration freighter and a crippled W-era cruiser. And then you got 8th fleet. Let's take a look at 8th. 8th fleet is 2 cruisers and a prime team. So it looks like all this other stuff here was supporting 8th fleet, and then maybe they attacked that starbase and got their hands, they got a little beaten up. All right, so that's what's going on with the Gorn. Let's slide up to the Tholians, and we'll do the Tholians and the ISC together because, well, they're engaged in a little tete-a-tete, shall we say. So I was talking about how the Tholians have these ships down on this Gorn wormhole, and they are up in the Balkans. And, you know, why do they have all these ships everywhere? Because, boy, do they have a little bit of a problem that they're going to have to deal with right now. If you recall, the ISC decided to pop through this wormhole, blow out the base that was on the other side, which was Tholian, and they are currently populating that hex. They are building bases, and they have a boatload of stuff there. Unfortunately, just the way the fleets are organized, it's a bit of a hassle to organize it all. I make a request of Paul, the ISC player, and Daniel, can we consolidate this, please and thank you? It just makes it easier to deal with. Maybe 1 or 2 fleets. And maybe in its own fleet boxes, like 6th and 5th. That would just be so magical if you could do that. Anyways, there's a whole boatload of ships here. Now, keep in mind, there are some crippled ships here, but the biggest thing is when we look at the named echelons, which are the majority of these ships. So we've got, what is it? Law, justice, providence, order, and truth. Truth, providence, order, law, and justice. Well, there you go. They're all there. So you can see you've got a bunch of Y-era ships, and of course the magic YCL. That is their best ship. You got a bunch of M-era ships like the CAMs at 7/8. You got a ship fleet with the DN and a bunch of these other fleets as well, but they're all crippled, which is, well, they have a bunch of crippled ships anyway. But there is quite a substantive number of ships here that can produce quite a bit of offensive firepower. That is one of the strengths of the ISC. They just have really strong ships. But there is also 5th and 6th fleet. So let's look at the 5th and 6th fleets here. These are the M fleets predominantly. So this is, whoops, we'll put that down there. So the big thing about these guys is you've got cruisers, light cruisers, and I love this ship, the CLGM. It's a commando cruiser with a G factor and a 6 attack, 6 defense ship. It's a light cruiser hull, but it's a 6/6 ship. It's just a little bit better than their CLM. It's great, fantastic ship. Plus they've got a bunch of frigates here. So if you count the frigates, they've got 9 plus 17, 26 frigates. They've got 3 and 2 of these light or these commando light cruisers, another 4 light cruisers, a DDM, and 4 of those CAMs. And there's other CAMs here as well, but they've got quite a few CAMs. They've got a command platform. They've got a base. This is a very hard target for anyone to deal with. However, the Tholians are not to be discounted because their second fleet is not small. Their second fleet has 11 of their cruisers, like we'll call them our early era cruisers, the CMs. They have 34 DDMs, unbelievable. They have 37 patrol craft, and then of course 2 scouts and 39 patrol craft. Wow. So how this ends up sort of working its way out, we'll have to see. I'll be very interested to see if and when the ISC pull the trigger, because right now all they've done is they've established a beachhead, but they haven't done anything with it yet. What's going to happen? Are they going to reach out? Are they going to poke? Are they going to prod? Are they going to go for a knockout? Are they going to engage Second Fleet directly, or is they going to wait for Second Fleet to come to them? Because if Second Fleet attacks that wormhole and the base that's there, it becomes a much more defensible position because the Tholians are unable to establish a web. They can still pinwheel, I believe. No, they can't pinwheel. They can't pinwheel and they can't do a web. So that's going to be problematic. We'll just have to see how it works. And of course, like I said, the ISC generate more offensive firepower per battle line or per combat round. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works. From an attrition standpoint, generally speaking, the Tholians do better. But with 2 groups of ships that are relatively equal in size, we'll have to see what that looks like. Right. So other than that, the Tholians don't really have too much going on. You can see here, if I take away ships, they are in the process of upgrading all their core bases, YBSs, into BATS, BATSMs. A notable improvement in combat effectiveness because, after all, YBS is a 4/8, BATS M are 12/11s, 12 attack, 11 defense. Better than a YDK in its attack factor. Of course, they don't have the same repair capacity, but from a purely sort of offensive firepower perspective, really good. BATS M's, by the way, are an improvement from the BSM. If you think about it, Y era base station, this is a M era base station, just with the M on the end. And so the BSM is a 10/9 upgraded to a battle station, which is a 12/11. So they're going through this progression. And one of the key things for us as players is to note what they can do, because if they can do it, obviously they've discovered the tech for it, and it's an indication of where they are in their tech progression. One of the sort of the big existential threats in this game is the idea that the Tholians get to GW tech, because essentially anyone who gets to GW tech is going to be lethal, but Tholians at GW, like the Gorn at GW and a couple of other factions, when they get there, oh my God, they are so difficult to deal with. And that's what we're dealing with here. So we'll have to see how that works out, how that evolves going forward. But as you can see, Tholians are going, they have a series of improvements that they're going through, improving their BSMs or their YBSs to BSMs and BSMs to BATs. They're going through this upgrade, trying to make them a harder target. And just in time, because the ISC coming through there is going to make things very challenging for the Tholians. So with all that, oh, and let's just slide over to the Tholian side of the neighborhood and just see what they got going on here. You can see that they've got a bug in the backyard. Not exactly sure what that is. I think it's a space scorpion, which makes it incredibly difficult to deal with. It just, for all intents and purposes, it's a hard monster. You can see that they've got enough in the area just to potentially deal with it. They've got enforcement fleet there. ISC, where are you? Named echelons, enforcement fleet. Yeah. So you got a YDN, 2C, YCA and CAM, 5 CLs. Try that again. 4 YCLs and a CLM, a scout, total of 5 frigates and a prime team. So they've got enough there to do something with it. And then, of course, 4th fleet. Look at that. 4th fleet and the Iron Web. 4th fleet, let's see. 4th fleet, YCL, nothing big. But they've got fleets in the area to be able to try and deal with that bug. They've got 3rd fleet. Let's take a look at ISC 3rd fleet. CAM, CL3. So they got stuff at the November wormhole. The November wormhole, which is interesting because there's a whole bunch of Riemann stuff in this area, mostly Y ships. But that's the move my head. This is the November wormhole, and as you can see, there's nothing guarding it, which is weird, right? I feel like there's a trap being laid here, but maybe it's a trap that the ISC want to spring. We shall see. You've got this is the major wormhole, the other side of that big stack ISC ships we were just looking at, and you can see here a base with a couple frigates. You've got what's really important for the Tholians or for the ISC is that they can build ships and forward deploy them from strat movement. Remember, we talked about that before with the Klingons. They can strat move stuff straight to that Tholian side of the wormhole, and it's their PDFQ. Pretty damn quick. And lastly, we've discussed the fact that I think we've already discussed these 2 third or NPC factions up here. So both minor planets, and they're not nothing. Like, they are pretty significant fleets. Let's just look at the, where are you? Hydrons, Old Colony Squadron, by example. It is a YDN, Lord Commander, which is M-era ship, Ranger with fighters. So these both have fighter factors. That's the little number here. So 2 and 1, and the diamond is a half. So 1.5. You've got Lancers, which have 2 fighter attack factors. Hunters, which are just straight frigates. Lancers here. Oh, LNF. Oh, there's 2 different Lancers. So there's a Lancer with 1 fighter factor and a Lancer with 2 fighter factors. Interesting. Scouts, tugs, and a YDN. Plus they have planetary ground bases, 12 of them. No. Brain. 8 of them. 8 of them, because they're 3 attack, 3 defense, and 24 total attack and defense factors there for the PGBs. And of course, they have a YDK. So not a soft target, as well as the battle fleet. So this one also has 8 planetary ground bases, YDK, and a tug. And the Kzinti battle fleet is, anytime we want to find it, there we are. Ooh. So we got a bunch. We have a tug with battle pods, so that makes that an 8-12. Bunch of CAs, so 7 ships. CLMs, 4 6s. Drone bombardment cruisers, which are, they have 4 drone bombardment factors. That's interesting. And they're also EW. That's interesting. A DNE, so that's an early era dreadnought escort. So that's a 10-11 ship. That's almost as good as my C6. They have a bunch, 13 of these frigates, drone bombardment frigates, and a scout. This, I would argue, the Furball planet, the Kzinti planet, is a harder target than the Hydrons. Either way, that's going to be, they're both going to be a tough fight. But what I wanted to point out was this temporal anomaly. So whereas before we had the temporal anomaly with the Carnivon, they beat the snot out of that thing and got some tech boost, we have a GW era cruiser that's popped into the ISC backyard, and they have a 10 attack, 10 defense ship, and they have this little circle. Now this little circle allows this ship to use something called an echelon, but because there are no other ships with it, it's useless. However, this will be something that we want to look for in the future for ISC ships when they start advancing into potentially GW tech. That circle, that little black circle, for all intents and purposes, we'll explore it later if we get to that point. Echelon formation is a technology that you can research, which will open up that potential ship, and it allows you to bring more attack factors, more ships into a battle line, making you much more potent. I'll tell you a quick story. So in a previous game, there were a number of us players playing together, and for one reason or another, the game sort of like fell apart. 3 of us who were still in the game decided to experiment with what was called the Three Powers War. The factions were me. I was playing the Paravians, which are not a faction in the New Worlds game, but they are basically, in the context of the Starfleet universe, they are a variation of the Gorn, feathered Gorn, I call them, and they have an interesting sort of roaming nomadic kind of theme to them, but nonetheless, they're just sort of like bird ships. The ISC, and there was the Gorn. Now, the way this was positioned on the map is the Three Powers War was, think of it like a diagonal line. On the top end was the Paravians, was the bottom is the Gorn, and in the middle was the ISC. The ISC were at GW Tech. The Gorn were just about to get to GW Tech, and the Paravians, me, were at late M trying to get to GW. My M ships were very good, and I had established star bases on the border. I had a pretty well defended position, all things considered. Then the ISC got GW Tech, and they started introducing ships like that, the one with that little circle. In every single engagement with the ISC, I lost. They blew out bases, even with a base as a defensive like bastion with its 36 attack and 36 defense, or I think in my case it was 32, 36 because I had SBMs. But either way, I had heavy defenses, EW advantage, and yet in spite of everything that I had, and I had pretty decent M ships, the ISC were able to field more ships in any one battle line. Each ship had more attack factors than mine. They were able to bring more offensive firepower to each and every fight. I kept losing, and there was nothing I could do except fall back. The Gorn suffered the exact same problem, except that they had battlefield repair, which is something they can do using repair pods and various other things. But they were able to suffer crippling damage, fall back, and instantly repair, which made it much harder for the ISC to gain ground with them. And of course, the ISC were facing this dynamic where they were facing polar opposite fronts and having to deal with that. The ISC was being played by the Tholian player in this game, and he devastated me. And despite the fact it was 2-on-1, the tech advantage that the ISC had made a huge difference. So when we talk about the existential threat that the potential Tholians pose, if they get to GW Tech, the reason why that's so real is 2 factors. One, Tholians have great capabilities, but when you get to GW Tech, like, they really kind of flush that stuff out, and they will crush, kill, destroy anything in their path. 2, the player playing the Tholians is really good at this game and will be very difficult to fight, especially if they have a tech advantage. You saw, if you've been watching this live stream or this show for some time, you saw the fate of the Carnivon when they fought against the Klingons, when the Klingons had M ships and they had Y ships. I had the tech advantage. I was able to better maneuver. I brought more attack factors per battle line. I was outpowering them and outmaneuvering them in every capacity. And as a result, I was able to make quick gains and we reached an agreement, and now we're allies. The Tholians, or the ISC in my example, when they get there, they're going to be able to have a very similar advantage. They will have more powerful ships, better capabilities. The reach won't be different because M and GW ships both move at 6, but there's just going to be a much harder target to take. So, what to do? How to resolve that? How do you deal with that? I don't know. We'll have to see. My logical approach has always been, you got to take the Tholians out early while they're weak. In my example, in this game, this guy can't be the one to do it because I don't have the reach to go out and touch the Tholians. I did through the Balkans. Of course, the Gorn have fixed that. I tried to get that sort of war on two fronts thing happening when I went through that wormhole, but that entire endeavor, the over-aggressive approach, backfired completely and caused the situation that the Klingons now find themselves in. Terrible tactics. But nonetheless, I can't reach the Tholians. The only people who can are the Gorn, which are currently allied with the Tholians, the Carnarvon, potentially, although they've got a bit of ways to go, the ISC and the Remans, certainly, and that's it. And of course the Juggernauts, but they're non-committal, shall we say. So all that to say, this is going to be a very interesting dynamic. I think the players in the game recognize the existential threat the Tholians potentially represent and what they can potentially do in this game if they were to get that tech advantage, and we think that they're close to it. Certainly with their CAM now making the rounds, it's going to be, that's a powerful ship, and it's going to be hard to fight it. The Klingons do have ships to deal with it, but man, this is going to be a really, really, really tough fight. So what do you think? Oh, and there's one last thing I want to share with you. A little bit of role play to give you a sense of what's going on in this game. Let me take a quick sip of coffee. All right. I'm going to slide my head to the other side here. Maybe zoom out a little bit and see if I can share with you the document. Okay. So once the Klingon fleet was approaching the Romulan homeworld, we thought it appropriate to reach out. As you may recall, in the video where we talked about the Carnarvon assault, you have 3 options: total death kill, make peace, or become an ally. There's all these options, right? So in approaching the Romulan capital, reach out and see what can happen. So the communique that went out to the Romulans was as such: Romulan senators, I applaud your accomplishments, and the Romulan armed forces have earned Klingon respect in battle as we have tested each other over these years. Congratulations on a well-fought campaign. As Klingon ships have entered the home systems of the Romulan capital, is the Senate willing to discuss terms for a cessation of hostilities? Admiral Key Irk, aide-de-camp to the Alpha Klingon Empire. And this response put a big smile on my face. Admiral, the Romulan people are grateful for such praise from a battle-hardened race as the Klingons. Given the results of your fleet approach and attempt at our last defended homeworld, we feel that you lack sufficient strength to successfully contest our homeworlds. Our Romulan fleet analysts have learned, to our regret, that successfully arriving at the homeworld by warp still requires crossing a mighty barrier. Speaking of calculations, we are reminded of your superior's words in the prelude to war. A vid screen pops up of the Alpha, and this was directly quoted from an email I had sent to him at the very beginning of this outset. Certainly, this is the Alpha speaking. Certainly, I do not need to point out the advantages and positions of our various forces, for I am sure this has been carefully calculated by your admirals and military advisors. Know that if we start down the path of mutual annihilation, I will not stop until I am standing in the Senate, with your leaders bowing in submission or dead at my hands. Vid screen closes. The Romulans continue. The Senate carefully weighed our chances before voting for conflict, and our people have signed on for this. It is unfortunate your leaders set such an uncompromising end state for our war. We can only assume that you have not understood your superiors' desires correctly, as to end this war prematurely would make a liar of the Alpha. As the embodiment of the Klingon martial traditions, such an infringement on honor would no doubt have major social consequences within your empire. The alternative hypothesis suggests this is a battle trick to buy time to extract your overstretched fleets from Romulan space, fend off the imminent Gorn incursion to Klingon home space, and buy time until you may avenge yourselves upon us. This hypothesis is strengthened by the empirical evidence of just such an occurrence against the Klingon Empire. See that video. We look forward to a point in time where the end state of the conflict has been achieved and we may resolve our war. Our people are weary of conflict. We have no doubt the Klingon people must be as well. Rate DeLoco, Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, so in the roleplay parlance, this is great because they're playing to the Klingon sense of honor and calling out the two key points there, which was the submission or the death at the hands of the Alpha. So one might say that a surrender and terms would be submission. And from a role-playing perspective, you could role-play that out whereby the terms are signed in the Romulan Senate. So that could, from a role-playing perspective, be played out. And then, of course, the other piece is that we devastate their homeworlds and take their homeworlds. So that's one way to go. From a player perspective, when we had the first Romulan-Klingon war, one of the challenges we had initially was there was this discussion, shall we say, around the mindset and the attitude around forever wars, or the idea that once you engage in a conflict, there is no room for retreat or surrender or compromise or peace, but rather you start a war and you go all out until you wipe out your enemy. That's possible, certainly. You can do that, I guess. The challenge is, and this is something we've discussed in the game, is that is that a mix that has a lot of fun for everyone? And because of some of the mechanics we have in this game, and something we'll address as sort of like in the after action or the retrospective when we talk about this, is the use of war turns as a weapon. Because in this game, you incur war turns for every turn you're at war, and once you reach certain thresholds, you have consequences. For example, when you hit over 20 war turns, and certainly we've been at war now for 11 turns with the Romulans and the Klingons, once you get to 20 war turns, your economy drops to 75% and you have a happiness sort of impact. When you get to 30 plus turns, I think it's 50%, and again, another happiness thing. Once you get to 40 turns, I think it's 40%, and so on. And so there's this ever increasing cost to war or long war, and the ability for a player to recover from that afterwards. You have to spend 2 turns of peace for every turn at war. So if you were, for example, at 30 war turns, it would take you 60 turns to recover. And if you think about that from the progression of this game, each turn takes about a week. That's 60 weeks to recover from that. So you could spend half a year at war, and you would spend over a year recovering from that war. So from a fun perspective on the player side, that's not as much fun, is it? Not only because your ability to go to war after that is significantly impaired, and it's a war game after all, but you're spending so much time sort of paying penance for the fact that you were at war. So is there a way for us to encourage a dynamic of play that is more fun for everyone, that allows for quick, intense, short periods of war and or quick recovery from war at peacetime or some other dynamic? So anyways, that's a discussion for a later day, but just to know that in the first Romulan war, Romulan Klingon War, we discussed that specifically because there was a desire initially to go all out. And at that early stage in the game, it seemed like a waste, because if you did that, like I said, you'd be driving an outcome down a certain path, because it would take so much for us to wipe each other out. It would just be it'd be a slugfest. It would take so long, and then whoever the winner was would be so devastated after that war, it would just take forever to recover. And something very similar is happening now. The only difference in this particular stage of the game is that we're arguably in the late stage of the game. I say we're in the late stage of the game. And so if you're going all out and you're going to wipe everybody out, then you might as well go. Like, just do it. Like, all in, chips on the table, away we go. And that's fair. Like, that's essentially what's going on right now. But if the Romulans win this war, or the Klingons win this war, whoever wins, they are going to be so theoretically devastated at the conflict that they will be unable to recover effectively, and it will be they will be unable to recover effectively, and they will be sidelined for the rest of the game, theoretically. So we'll have to see how this goes and how quickly this war can or cannot be resolved. We'll have to see what the price is for the conflict when it's all said and done, and how we can make it more fun for everyone in future games. So anyways, let's get off that soapbox and let's talk about the chat. So we've got You Can't Be Petty. No, sorry. George Duffy, here we are. If there are only... Oh, no, we had that discussion. Boom, 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 boom. Daniel says K7R is equal to the D7. The KR is the D6. We were talking about those Riemann and Klingon ship comparisons. Bill, of course, was commenting about moving my head, and I did. They are each race's National Guard. Yes, those are talking about National Guard. Daniel Eastland. It's up to the ISC player how he organizes his fleets. Big smirk. Paul, let's sort out those fleets. Let's make it a little bit easier. Bill Smith says it's a tarantula in ISC space, and like I say, it's a tarantula. So I think, yeah. Did I say scorpion? Space scorpion? So tarantula. Either way, very difficult fleet, or very difficult monster, which is making things, excuse me, making things very difficult for the ISC. Paul says, can I have more fleet boxes, please, so I can put lots of single ships in them? Yes. Yes, thank you. It's funny, actually, in a previous game, I did something very similar, drove the GM nuts, and was promptly told, stop doing that. I thought that was funny. Okay, so with that said, what do you think? Here we are an hour and a half into this show. We've got good times as far as how things are progressing, where the war is. What do you think about the siege of the Romulan homeworld? Do you think, after looking at that piece in the video, do you think there's a particular strategy that should be used, either in the defense or in the assault of the Romulan homeworld? What do you think, from historical siege tactics, what do you think the best option is to be able to break down the Romulan defenses and isolate them from their ability to defend it? How can the Klingons be victorious and speedy in their elimination of Romulan faction? And on the other side, how could the Romulans successfully defend against a Klingon attack? There's so much at play here. There's so many options. What do you think? All right, if you've stayed this long in the video, I would humbly ask that you hit that thumbs up button just to get as many likes on the tickling the YouTube algorithm in the right way. And if you haven't already, please consider hitting the subscribe button like Dr. Death 43. and joining us here on the community. We're at 330 subscribers, hasn't really budged much. We lost a subscriber and then gained a subscriber over the past week. That little shuffle and dance is always fun, but we're trying to get to that magic number 500. It was always around trying to unlock the community tab, which of course we now have, but just trying to grow this community and get more people interested and involved in this game that we all love to play. So if that's up your alley, then please consider hitting the subscribe button. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up and like the video. And otherwise than that, put your comments in the chat or in the comments below when the video reposts in about an hour, or in about 24 hours. Let us know what your strategies and tactics are. Would you like me to see put up a community post asking for key tactics? Actually, there we go. Put your recommendations on strategies and tactics in the comments for this video once it reposts. I will take the top ones and put them up in a community post in the next week to ask you what you think the best strategies for the siege, either offensively or defensively, should be. Put your comments in there. Let me know. I'll put up the post and we'll have a vote on which strategies are the best. Okay. With that said, thank you so much. I love you, and I will see you next week. I'm off to Discord to do a little chitter chat. If you want to join us, head over to coffee and you'll see how to get there. Otherwise, I will see you all later. Ciao for now.